All right. Well, I think we're ready to get started. Welcome, everyone. I see quite a few people here joining us. Welcome, LJ. H. Dye. I'm sure you have a full name more than H, but welcome. And Kayla, welcome. We're so happy that you guys are here. Dr. Jamie's going to give us a great little workshop here on self-love and recovery, and I'm super excited. I will let you take the stage, so I'm going to cut my camera off. If you guys are welcome, the way Alternative Healthcare Solutions works is this is really interactive. We want you here. We want you to be involved and to really get the most out of it. So feel free to stay in the chat. If you click on session and then click on chat, yep, exactly. You're going to be able to say hi, good morning, and chat with us. And if you have any questions, I'll make sure that Dr. Jamie gets those questions. We'll kind of highlight them across the screen so that you're able to see those and just really go in and have just a fulfilled event here. This is so great. But you're also welcome to share your audio and video and join us on stage if you have questions or if you just want to be interactive. Whatever your needs are, we're here for you. So go ahead, Dr. Jamie, let's get started.
So boundaries are good. So let me just play off of what you just said, Jamie Lee. So I'm going to actually explain a little bit to the audience in the world of psychology. I am a psychologist. I'm a licensed clinical social worker. I'm also a trauma therapist. And I think the trauma therapy part is probably the most important thing, given where psychology is heading today. I certainly, as a licensed professional, I've lived it all. I've been a therapist for over 30 years. Forgive the lighting here, y'all. I'm actually in New York City practicing self-love. I came back and my daughter had the week off. And my self-love is to spend a week with my daughter and to truly, truly feed my soul. And she's 13 years old. Yes, I am an AARP daddy. And she is my everything. But she also teaches me a lot. I always say that children are the most wonderful, wonderful examples of psychology, of self-help, of actually self-love. And children are wonderful until adults screw them up. So I am also here not to screw up that psyche at 13 years old. And she set up the whole itinerary here in New York. And but to do this actual workshop this morning was very important. I believe Jamie Lee's work, I believe the Alternative Healthcare Solutions is not just up and coming, but is the future of a lot of things in psychology that nobody understands. And all the practitioners here, I'm going to turn this over in about 20 minutes to Jamie Lee to facilitate Q&A. I'm going to take simply the first hour, as I've been gratefully kind of provided this as sort of the kickoff. And it's a good thing, I think. I think I belong just in the kickoff. Self-love is a very misconceived, misunderstood concept. And as a psychologist, I can tell you the way we looked at it over the years and where we're headed to now. And I think your group, your organization, with the polyvagal techniques, the alternative healthcare approach, is literally the future. So I'll give plenty of time for Q&A. And maybe ways that you can approach this new world of psychology and realize how important this association, this community is and will be. Certainly, if you can language what you need to language to not just patients and not just people coming to get psychology, but to practitioners today who sometimes have a more closed-minded look at psychology. So let's get into the power of self-love and why self-love matters, how it got started in the world of psychology. And I'll leave plenty of time to actually hear what you do and maybe be able to help you reframe it in terms of where it belongs in the future. Certainly how you can monetize it in the future. I think that's very important clinically, is to be able to take self-love and bring it into our practice of psychology and to help people everywhere. Because, this elusive concept of self-love truly, truly is elusive. We use it as a euphemism, and we all think like bumper stickers. Once you read it, you'll understand it. Well, my day job as a psychologist is I am Chief Compassion Officer at America's largest primary care delivery organization. It's called WellMed Medical Management. It is part of United Health, and we're based in San Antonio. We're based in Tampa. And so I work with about 1 million patients and caregivers and physicians and clinics and also try to talk to them about the superpower of self-love. Why? Because I train leadership, and leadership is about high performing teams. It's about psychological safety of groups in these clinics and supporting teams. And this word of self-love often becomes esoteric, but self-love is not esoteric. Self-love is a necessity if we're going to have a healthy work site. So I also come to you as executive director and co-founder of an amazing organization that we started 3.5 years ago called the STAR Network. Now, STAR is actually an acronym for Survivors of Toxic Abusive Relationships. So, as a psychologist, and I've been a therapist now for a good 35 years, I started being a social worker in the mid 80s when deinstitutionalization was going on. And I later became a psychologist when I started in television in 1992. I worked in television for 20 years, helping guests talk court and reality when they were exploited. And I believe they certainly were exploited by CBS, NBC, ABC, Tribune, Harpo Productions, you name it, Time Warner. I helped get them help, meaning I got about 800 guests, $8 million of care, and would come on with them and talk about their sobriety, their relapse, really their amazing way, if they could, how do they integrate the power of self-love and why self-love mattered to them. So let me start at the very, very beginning. And what you may have as your concept of self-love, because many psychologists and social workers, mental health counselors, marriage and family counselors started like I started in let's say in the 1990s. They started, and we looked at self-love as something that about accepting yourself wholeheartedly, treating yourself with kindness, prioritizing your health, your mind, your body, and your spirit. And self love was really taking yourself and putting it first. And that's very, very difficult. And I'm going to tell you why in a moment. Self love, we also found out there was many ways to practice it. We talked in those days about the boundaries, which I will get more into a little bit later, and try to refer you to excellent resources who can discuss boundaries, much like Brene Brown, let's say in Houston. She's fabulous on YouTube, and she talks about, in a vulnerable way, boundaries and why we need them and how we need them, because it's an aspect of self-love and psychology. And there's too few people with really strong boundaries, too few people that understand the word no is a complete sentence. Okay. And boundaries keep us safe, and boundaries keep the world around us safe. They know who we are. And I'm also going to talk a little bit about self-love as a journey. Okay. Not a destination. So to take time in the practice and develop this healthy sense of self-worth, right? It's become a real popular concept to throw out, but most people don't really know what it means. And even in my world of psychology, and doesn't matter how many letters you have after your name or how many years you've done this work, and mine is considerable, we too are evolving. And that's what I want to start with today. So in the 1980s, when I first started as a clinical social worker and moved on, I was a tough kid. And so my parents would drag me to therapists. And so I have literally been in therapy, I would say. Many of you can see me that it's been a few years now, since literally, if you will, the 80s, or even before that. I started when I was 18 years old, and they were dragging me in there and saying something's wrong with our kid. He's oppositional. He's wild. He doesn't know what he's doing. Let's get him some self-help. And how do we do that? Well, let's get him self-awareness. Well, let's drag him into a therapist. So I was dragged into a wonderful therapist who at the time was a disciple of Anna Freud. So Sigmund Freud was our granddaddy, and Anna Freud was his daughter. And she had the adolescence that she concentrated on the most. And it was so funny. I remember my mom bringing me in there, and the therapist literally chain smoked for 1 solid hour, literally lighting a cigarette off the next one. And I came out of saying to my mom, I said, I don't know much about psychology back then, but I know that you shouldn't chain smoke in front of your patient for an hour, but he did. So literally back then, we rest on the shoulders of the powerhouses that began us. In the 1880s, it was Sigmund Freud. Obviously, it's Carl Jung, which I was trained as a Jungian therapist. And the Jungian therapist believes, yes, in the power of self-love. Why? Because we believe also with the collective unconscious, once you practice self-love, it becomes collective love. It's contagious. So as a therapist there, I've been a Jungian trained therapist for many years. Well, psychology still evolved, and people came to see me and came to see therapists at 2 o'clock on a Thursday, and they would tell us all the issues that were going on in their life. And the next thing you know, we would say, "Hey, what happened at 10 years old with your mother?" They would say it, and we'd go, "Aha, aha, that's amazing." Well, that's a psychoanalytic psychotherapeutic approach, and I was certainly a part of it. But I was also going to therapy myself and as a patient. And I think all just want you to know that if you see a good therapist, you need to interview them. Excuse me, you need to make sure they're in therapy, and you have every right to ask them that, because to know oneself is to know the world. And I too was in therapy for ages. So I thought everything was going well. I taught this at Florida International University. I became a trauma therapist in the 1990s at Florida State University. I worked with cops. I worked with firemen, emergency medical technicians, people running in the burning homes. Just like you, it's a metaphor. When others are running out, you're all practitioners and you all work with, polyvagal sort of techniques and essential oils and approaches with massage. And this is an integrative, alternative group, which is vital. You are the future, by the way. Let me just full stop. Don't hang up. You're not marginal anymore. We've become to know that psychology has changed. And in the 1990s, a wonderful person, her name was Dr. Marsha Linehan, and I don't diagnose patients that are not mine. Okay, it's not ethical. But Marsha, if you look up Marsha Linehan, okay, Linehan, she began the approach called DBT, dialectical behavioral therapy. Okay, it was about mindfulness. It was built on Daniel Goleman's model in Harvard, which was emotional intelligence, EQ, which also is about being in the moment, mindfulness, the power of now, right? Not having to have anxiety about tomorrow's or the fears from yesterday. Okay, it didn't matter, none of that. Expectations became the seeds of resentment. Well, I was still a Jungian trained therapist, so I was seeing people with that aha moment. And when we create that aha moment, guess what people do? For 1 hour in the 24-hour day when we would see them, and then the next 6 days when we wouldn't see them, it would be painful. We would open up something we couldn't suture, and many of them would go out and disassociate. What does that mean? They would drink, they would drug, they would go to eating disorders. They would find ways to medicate the pain of the therapy, literally. And so in many ways, we were opening up wounds we couldn't suture. Well, when Marsha Linehan came out and started doing DBT, she did it for very the deep end patients who were borderline, or let's say who had issues of narcissistic personality disorder, et cetera, et cetera. And so Frank, I think my power is running out here, so let me try to plug in. So Marsha really felt that she had something there, and us in therapy knew she did. But what happened was, forgive me, I'm going to try to catch this really well. Let's see if it works. Okay. But Marsha, nobody came to get help from her. Why? It was for more borderline personality disorder. It was for that. And they never came in. They never thought they had a problem. What we learned, and I'm just going to give you a little background here, and then I've got questions and answers. We learned about something called the attachment issues. That all of us had attachment disorder. All of us had that in some kind. Yes, we may not have risen to the level of borderline narcissist, antisocial, or anything that we call the relationship disorders. But even though they didn't come for treatment because they didn't think it was their issues, because a cluster B or personality disorder never thinks it's their problem. They have very little or no empathy, and they're very transactional. We found out that many others had attachment issues. They didn't rise to the level of psychopathology and diagnosis. We had anxious attachment style, secure attachment style, avoidant attachment style. So we started using Marsha's work in DBT a lot. And so if you are hearing me now and you have patients and clients and you want to work with a good therapist, here's my lesson for this one before we get into Q&A. Make sure they're trained in DBT, dialectical behavioral therapy, which we do things like EMDR, which is trauma reduction techniques, but everything's experiential. You have to do the work. Or they can be trained in IFS, internal family systems. Do not, and I really say this often because I am that therapist. I'm also the Jungian trained therapist. Do not send to somebody who's not trauma trained today. Why? Well, in our network, we call the STAR network, we have three parts of our mission. One is treatment of complex PTSD, which is childhood PTSD, learning the fight, flight, fear response, unfortunately, through often dysfunctional homes. Um, we also have we also learn what's called the fawn response. Okay, the fawn response is what codependency is. Okay, I'm in recovery for 32 years for codependency. Well, when Marshall Inhan started doing the work, we started realizing that we had the ability to change our brains. We called it neuroplasticity, and it's very important because you, as a community here at the Alternative Healthcare Solutions, can help us. Every one of you that probably tuning in today have a very important piece we call a polyvagal sort of technique, a tool in your toolbox to help us retrain our brains. So that's where psychology is today. And that's where we're looking at self-love today. At the Star Network, this is definitely a shameless commercial. If you go to starnetwork.org, you will be able to come to free drop-in support groups. We have them on Mondays. We have them Wednesdays. We Friday. They're very free. They're underwritten by our donors. I too had gone through a toxic relationship many, many years ago, and it opened my eyes as a therapist that this may be the worst public health disaster in the world, and that we don't understand well enough that at childhood, 0 to 8, our brains are tabula rasa, as John Locke would say, blank slates, and parents were never trained how to parent. Jamie Lee didn't mention to you, of course, I believe it or not, it's my third charity, but this one's very personal to me. But my last one was working with caregivers of chronic and terminal and acute illness. And I worked with a celebrity because I worked in television. Her name was Lisa Gibbons. Your techniques here at the Alternative Healthcare Solution, at the Healthcare Solutions, is what we used in hospitals around the country to help caregivers regain their lives too. Polyvagal techniques, way that we can actually soothe ourselves, whether it was an essential oil, whether it was a DBT or EMDR session. It was all experiential, but it was more trauma-based. So the beauty is that psychology has changed. When I wrote a book with Lisa Gibbons, it was called Take Your Oxygen First. Think about that, okay? Because most of us don't. Most of us, I saw in the healthcare field, all take care of somebody else. And we got into this field because as children, we used to take care of our parents. It was Gabor Mate, who I hope you look up, who's part of an advisory board I sit on called the Polyvagal Institute. Bessel van de Kolk is on that, Stephen Portia. I see a therapist every week who was trained by Peter Levine on somatic interventions around trauma. And these are the future of psychology. This is also the future of you learning self-love with the Alternative Healthcare Solutions organization with Jamie Lee. I have had enough conversations with your executive director of this organization to realize I'd like you all to stay with this group. This group isn't just about what do I do and how I help with essential oils, or how do I help with learning about things like childbirth and how to do this in a polyvagal way instead of a traumatic way in some OB unit. This is really the future of psychology. This is the future of self-love. So the beauty is that we now, as individuals, can change our brain. Okay, we can do the neuroplasticity necessary to change our brain. If you hold for 1 second, my beautiful daughter, if you will, this is all you have to do is talk. Has got the the hair thing on, the shampoo, or what am I calling it? You can tell I'm a knucklehead father. The hair dryer. 1 second, I'll be right back. She understands now polyvagal things. I said, that loud sound is going to be disruptive to my brain, and I won't be able to talk either. She's so great, though, man. I can't tell you how beautiful it is. I always say to her, she goes, I'm so stupid. I said, no, I'm so human. The words we say to ourselves, you all, is self-love. We're learning that in retraining our brains, we have to reparent ourselves. Okay. The beauty of psychology today is parents and I'm a parent too. Okay. It's not telling your child, I love you, I love you, I love you, which is wonderful. And somebody said, if you don't know what to do as a parent, kiss your child 1,000 times a day, and that's a start. Well, it is only a start, because to be a good parent is to do 3 things. And this is about self-love. It's to be fair, it's to be consistent, and to be available. Okay. When we're not consistent, okay, here's why parenting today has created such complex trauma. And by the way, if you go to Star Network, you'll learn about it. And if you go to our partners called the CPTSD Foundation, cptsdfoundation.org, complex trauma, this is the future of what we're talking about with self-love. The complex trauma group is fantastic. And I don't want to get psychobabbly with you. Complex trauma is not in the DSM-5 yet, which is our diagnostic statistical manual. Okay, PTSD is. PTSD is an episodic thing that changes your life in a very quick moment. Physical, sexual abuse, car accidents, God forbid, rape, whatever you watched. My nephew went to war 3 times in Iraq and Afghanistan, came out with severe PTSD. We have that. We treat that. Complex PTSD is the first 8 years of your life. It's the development of resilience with proper parenting. It's being fair. If as a parent understands the new psychology, is being fair, consistent, and available. Okay. It's also using your techniques as an organization for themselves. Because for me, I have to have 3 children I take care of every day for self-love. One is myself. Okay. Because I could be a hypocrite too, but I have to see my therapist every week. I have to practice, breath work. I have to do meditations. I have to do things that we call emotional regulation. And I'm going to be quiet and start taking questions. But the key today to self-love is not cerebral. It's not, you can't read yourself into a book. Okay. I have 35,000 employees. So when my doctors get and they very much are codependent. Listen, a doctor has been studying for 15 years. Okay, their parents have pushed them to become a doctor, have missed a lot of psychosocial education in their lives, the resilience development. As kids, they were probably preconditioned to become that. And so when they come to me and they come to our clinics, they don't really have practice skills. And so what I do a lot is deal with toxic clinics and toxic work sites and toxic supporting teams. But when I refer a doctor to treatment, I refer them to complex post-traumatic stress. Why? And then I'll kind of leave this open. The new self-love model, okay, whether it's therapy or whether it's the alternative healthcare solutions in this entire community, is number 1, we have to be the change we seek. I didn't say that. Gandhi said that. We have to really parent ourselves and be fair, consistent, available. Okay. The first trauma bond in toxic world we feel, and this is unfortunate, and believe me, it's indictment of me too, because all of us can't be very, very consistent parents, right? I can't be. My beautiful child here is, I'm in and out, running around the world, helping United, running the charity. We all have to practice first on ourselves. We have to be fair, consistent, available. We have to get all the wonderful groups here in this place. And I saw your program today, whether it's essential oils, whether it's massage, whether it's taking care of ourselves in some powerful alternative way. We have to keep feeding ourselves and realizing that reparenting is to parent ourselves with all the things we never got as a child. If you look at Gabor Mate's work, Gabor Mate said it great, right? Trauma is not what happens to you. It's what happens within you as a result of what happens to you. So if you read Bessel van der Kolk's book, The Body Keeps the Score, you'll realize that your mind can do anything. Okay, I'm a hypnotherapist. I can't wait till you hear the hypnotherapist later who speaks, because she was so responsible for Jamie Lee's pregnancy. And I believe in hypnotherapy, don't get me wrong, but I can get you to do a lot of things in hypnotherapy. I won't do hypnotherapy with a female. For one reason, when I do an induction or go down, we call the abreaction, or we go down to the traumatic issue, an aha moment. If you do that with a man and it's a female patient, often they'll find out that, believe it or not, their trauma was at the hands of a male. And they won't know that until you've done the abduction. And now all I've done is recreate the trauma. So if you're a hypnotherapist loving person, make sure if you're a hypnotherapist, you're a woman, go to a woman hypnotherapist. If you're a man, you can go to a man hypnotherapist. But please, I've had the worst happen years ago where I just recreated a trauma, took somebody down, and realized that all I was another male voice taking through an induction. And when they got there, it was a male that created the trauma. And it's not good. So anyway, I believe in hypnotherapy. Ericksonian hypnotherapy is wonderful. So what we're trying to say to you today, to listen today, and why I'm starting today, is that psychology is a young science. Unfortunately, it's suffered the headwinds of shame and stigma. Okay, so today, people don't even come see me unless it's intervention. Prevention is extraordinarily easy to do. And the beauty of this group, the Alternative Healthcare Solutions, I always call, have a bank account of resilience. Complex trauma recovery is the development of resilience. If you go to Tarnon, which is our support groups, we do 4 times a week, you'll develop resilience. It's free. You'll see a whole new family of choice. As Gabor often says, the child could never really be authentic as a child. So we have to start recreating and reparenting ourselves. And we do that in Tarnon, which is also an anonymous program that works with AA, NA, but it's more trauma. It's more our 12 steps and our 12 promises are taking back our lives. Okay, it's okay to say my life is unmanageable. I'm turning it over to a power greater than myself. And Bill and Bob had a great way, and it was a religious way. And if you choose Jesus, Moses, Buddha, Allah to, transform your life, that's all great. I believe in transformation all the way. But what Freud did say that was right was, once you're aware, you're no longer naive. And that's what today's conference is about today, is to create awareness. If you're no longer naive, Freud also talked about the concept of cognitive dissonance. You can't sit with 2 competing thoughts. So you'll have to transform. And listen, I'm not a soothsayer of Buddha. You can transform with Jesus. You can transform with Moses. You can transform with Allah. You can transform, as a Sikh, a Hindu, whatever it is. Transformation takes many forms. Tarnon is the way we transform from childhood PTSD, which I do think is the future. I think relapse, I used to run treatment centers, come from those voices from childhood. So I'm going to say this. The first trauma bond we ever feel is as a child. Why is that? Well, we all thought that raising a child was about Skinnerian operant conditioning, okay? Okay, if you do this, I'll let you have your iPad. If you don't do this, I'll take your iPad away. If you get screaming and yelling, I'll put you in timeout. But if you don't scream and yell, you don't have to be in timeout. And then we could never apply those interventions ever consistently, right? We wouldn't see our child for, 16 hours a day. They'd be in school, things like that. So we created a trauma bond, and that's the Stockholm syndrome in children, meaning you didn't know if you went to your parents, you were going to get a pat on the back, a kiss on the cheek, or you were going to get reprimanded. And it could have been the same behavior. So understand that operant conditioning, behavioral conditioning, Skinnerian, the world of Skinner only works in 2 environments. Okay. And that's prisons, because they have a controlled environment. And that's the military, because they have a controlled environment. It does not work in parenting. And in parenting, you set up what I call the trauma bond initially in a child. And guess what happens then? Happened with me. Let me just use it with me. So I saw a family that fought cats and dogs. My parents didn't really get along. So if I never saw a healthy relationship for 18 years as a child, how would I have a healthy relationship with myself? Okay, what would I even see as a standard? So I didn't. So here's how childhood PTSD works. The first trauma bond we have is with our families. It's inadvertent. I'm not here to indict parenting. I'm sure my parents did the best they could, but they read Dr. Spock. And if you read Dr. Spock, it's a hideous book. The man says, cry until you get the milk and all this stuff. Well, no, the child needs to be authentic and be held when the child's crying for the milk, and get mom's milk. And this is the natural thing of life. So understand that this is the way we raise a child, is operant conditioning, and we cannot. My daughter is here right now, and the way I raise her is I create a neuro-safe environment. This is the future of healthcare, a future of psychology, and the future of self-love. And that means what? That means, okay, we honor her neurosystem. The new self-love is, how do I befriend my own neurosystem, my neurological system, because it wasn't befriended as a child. And I never learned a healthy relationship as myself. So I had to get into therapy early and learn it. Then when I met that toxic individual years later, guess what? It wasn't her fault. She was a trigger, what I call the glove effect, the trauma bond I felt as a child. I went into the world of codependency because that's all there was then. I went into recovery. Guess what, y'all? Codependency is a co-addiction. All addictions, like drugs or alcohol, codependency, eating disorders, are a trauma response. If you listen to Gabor Mate, he will say it's not a problem to be an addict. It's a solution to be an addict. Because the fight, flight, freeze response is developed in childhood. Those are the biological responses of the blank slate. If you've got a fighting environment or an insane environment, or parents don't know how to really do this, guess what? You can develop the fight, flight, freeze. Your mind is totally blank. But there's a fourth F, and then I'm going to be quiet and take questions for the next 20, 30 minutes. The fourth F is the fawn response. The fawn response is exactly what codependency is, right? Getting your self-esteem from people, places, and things externally. That's what I had to do as a child. I had to calm my mom down. I had to calm my dad down. I was the peacemaker. I had no real authenticity. I had to become a chameleon. And so understand that this is the way a child grows up. A child grows up in very much an operant conditioning way, not understanding anything. And the trauma bond was first with their parents. The Stockholm syndrome. Was I going to get, food today, or was I going to get hit today? And that literally is a Stockholm syndrome. The next thing is the child needed to realize that I never saw a healthy relationship. So I have to get into therapy. I have to do cool things like with the whole association here, Jamie Lee. I had to be a nutritional person. I had to be kind to myself. Massage. I have to train myself. The third, when we say at the Star Network, the toxic thing is the person who triggers that unresolved issues of childhood. So I'm going to wrap this up and tell you the new psychology is the path. I truly am a big believer because I was part of the old path, and I still am. I'm a Jungian trained therapist. I went through the emotional flashbacks and psychotherapeutic, psychoanalytic world of my patients. I realized later that I could retrain my brain. And beautiful Marshall Linehan, who tried to develop DBT and nobody would come, created a fabulous sort of approach. And so today, when I work with clients, I do it with them reparenting themselves. What is that? Being fair, consistent, available. If you go check our 12 steps, and I won't go through them all at Taranon, our first step is radical acceptance of the moment without judgment. Okay. This is it. Unfortunately, my mom didn't know how to parent. They fought. Thank God they got divorced and they found love somewhere else. But the parents had to watch the poop show. The children had to watch the poop show. My sister and I had to hide in the closets. My fight, flight, fear response came out. They diagnosed me later. We forget the depression part. That was genetically predisposed. And I stopped taking medication later when I learned how to develop resilience in my brain. But I also say that, what also happened too was I ended up with ADD diagnoses. Well, if you listen to Gabor, he's 100% right. ADD is a solution too for complex trauma. If you're in a war zone, why can't you can't focus in on the moment. So you go to school and everything is like this moment. And it's not really a neurological issue. It is a disassociation issue. So when we tend to disassociate and go outside ourselves in medicating this, and self-love became, how do we medicate ourselves? All right, it's a lot of psychobabble, but here's the gig, and I'll close with this, and I'll let our fabulous Jamie Lee try to make sense of this for you, or you can ask me questions today. And if you go to thestarnetwork.org, you will see that we concentrate on support of those who go through toxic relationships, not just intimate, could be at the work site, could be high conflict caregiving, LGBTQ plus, that world is there too, teens and tweens. We work with the support. So we have free support network so people can reparent themselves, because the key to self-loving yourself today is emotional regulation, stress reduction, right? I'll do some breath work for you in a moment, or at the end of this, if you give me less than 3 minutes, because human beings are fabulous. We can change the chemistry of our body in less than 80 seconds. I do it with cops when they run into SWAT situations, and you can do it throughout the day today too. It's breath work. I use 478. So you can always go to YouTube and put 478, and Dr. Andy Weil, the wonderful integrative medicine doctor, will do it. But we can retrain our brains, and we can show ourselves self-love by what? One is actually emotional regulation, which is stress reduction. Listening to our bodies. Don't listen to your mind. Your body is your key. Do I feel like I'm walking on eggshells? Is my intuition there? The mind can deflect, distract, project, deny. Don't even listen to it. As we do trauma work, it's our bodies we listen to. The second thing is hang around healthy people. Audit every relationship you have in your life. If you have a manipulator, a person who's controlling you, a person who's telling you what to do, a person who doesn't bear witness to your pain, as I often say at my company, what's the definition of burnout? When one person works harder than the other. If you're twisting yourself up like a pretzel for somebody, that's not a relationship you need to be in. And guess what? You can't get well in the environment that made you sick. So we work with domestic abuse women. We work with men in that way. So our group is support. Okay. We work with treatment of complex trauma with the CPTSD Foundation. And the third thing, which I can't wait to get Jamie Lee engaged with, because I just can't wait for you to hear her story. I just find her an example of motherhood, is that we're doing prevention programs around the country to teach parents how, not through operant conditioning and positive reinforcement, negative reinforcement, which creates the trauma bond, how to neuroparent your child, how to do what we call create no eggshells, how to keep them in a value-based way, how to honor their growth. And that's what I'd like you to do with yourself. So when I came back into this world, and I'll be quiet now and turn it over to Jamie Lee, I came back to honor 3 children. The one within me that was always kind of forgotten, that never could be authentic, which I had to do first to be the corrective experience for my daughter. Though my daughter's the most important, I can't skip me, because I can't tell my daughter what to do unless I do it first. She has to feel it and be attracted to it. The second child I came back for was our foundation, the Star Network, which I'd love for all of you to come to. It's free. It's a charity. Everything is free. You can refer your patients there, and we'll still honor your techniques all the time. And the third part is to join us for the prevention piece. That's our North Star. As you can see, I'm an older AARP daddy, so all of my team are like the ages of Jamie Lee, because I have to hand this thing over. I may see the promised land, I won't get there. But the future of being really, really, really self-loving to yourself is, how do I emotionally regulate myself? How do I honor my own body when I am feeling dysregulated? And how do I hang around healthy, safe people? And that's why I wanted to begin this thing, and it's 9:40, and I want to now turn this back over to Jamie Lee and to any questions you may have, because thank heavens, psychology, in the face of shame and stigma, is finally figuring this out. And if you go see the Polybagel Institute, and you read Gabor, and you read Peter Levine, and you come to the Star Network, you'll get a hold of the new psychology. But guess what? And I'll close with this. This is the group now, okay, that retrains our brain, that believes that what you do at the alternative healthcare solution, the integrative medicine that you perform and that you're coming here today, is the future. It's not coming and seeing me at 2:00 on a Thursday afternoon so I can actually stir up your past recreative traumas and dramas. It's literally, how do I involve all of you practitioners and all you people that believe in the alternative healthcare solutions group here that we are so grateful to partner with at the Star Network. And then, of course, it's how do I make sure I audit my relationships and be with healthy people who can love, bear witness, and support me. That's it. That's the new self-love of psychology. So, Jamie Lee, I'm going to throw it to you. And I know you've got a few minutes now before our next speaker. And if there's any questions, I can answer and also validate what you all are doing here at the Alternative Healthcare Solutions organizations and associations. I'm happy to as well.
Thank you so much for speaking to that. You know, when I started Alternative Healthcare Solutions, the vision really truly was that if we are to plant ourselves in solid soil, in fertile soil, I should say, and really begin to cross-pollinate with different modalities, that we will bear fruit and nourish nations. That was the vision for Alternative Healthcare Solutions. And that means bringing together a collective of practitioners who are all across the board of polyvagal, hypnotherapy, you name it, all across the board, to give that really holistic approach, because we are mind, body, and spirit. You cannot address just the physical body and expect to be transformed. You have to address the mind, the body, the spirit as a whole person. And most of my clients, I work with people who are looking to reverse chronic conditions, such as autoimmune diseases and things of that nature, that they're really wanting to get their body into a healing state. But you know, what's so interesting is that every single client I have ever seen, they have started, whenever I've asked them, where was the beginning of your health issues? What happened? Tell me how that started. And they will connect their emotional trauma. They will say, well, it all started when my dad died, or it all started when I went through a divorce, or it all started, and they name some sort of emotional trauma. And that's why it's so important to come together as a collective to approach different areas of the mind, body, and spirit, to be able to bring that whole holistic view of healing and transformation for people. So that is what we do here. I'm so excited everybody's here. There is
Can I bring one thing too before you go on?
Yeah.
That you're 100% right. First, I want to validate everything you just said. We point to the childhood trauma. We point to the, God forbid, the physical, emotional, abusive, sexual traumas, whatever it was that tragically shifted and changed our lives. But why I want everybody to sit and wait in this attendance today and stay here today is that your story of childbirth will be the one that says it's not the obvious traumas like the ones you mentioned that we go back to and can point to as to why today we can't really get our lives together. You know, the beauty of your story is that in psychology, and lots because of shame and stigma, we don't understand in utero trauma yet. We don't have enough research metrics and analytics, and I come from that world. We don't understand it as much, and starting to a little bit 0 to 4 years old trauma, which is, again, the blank slate of the mind of the child that has to take things in that fight, flight, freeze biological way. How do we create that? Which becomes a tattoo in our brain. So as I work with 35,000 employees, and my boss says, well, how do you do a trauma-informed program for them? I say, Doc, I see them as 8 years old who have not gotten therapy, because most people don't. They go to their hairdresser, they go to others. So in your story, not only is the observable, identifiable trauma the one that we can point to, but the way you gave childbirth, and I'm not going to spoil your amazing hour, it took into account the actually in utero trauma. It took into account that our obstetric industry right now is bizarre, that I have the most beautiful daughter in the world, but I remember at 2 a.m, lights, camera, action, didn't even know the OB that walked in. Many people will just, do the cesareans and pick the day, but the child is brought into a very, very traumatic setting with lights, camera, action, that from a, in utero sort of calmness. We also don't understand, which was where the prefrontal cortex is developed, which is the part of your brain of reasoning, the 4 to 8 year old trauma, as much as we think we know. And so listening to your story of childbirth later, I think brings a lot of this home of the not so obvious. So I'm asking everybody to stay on until they get to your story, because even for me, and I am a trauma therapist, and I understand this extraordinarily well, and I'm very fortunate to be on these and privileged to be on with these, thought leaders. Your story to me with them would be an education for them about the trauma we don't know about, the in utero, the 0 to 4. And so I would love for you to talk about your birth and Sophia and your family. And also, please bring in your husband, because this is an extraordinarily important part too of emotional safety. So anyway,
Yeah.
wait till your conversation, because that to me is the not so obvious that really blew me away as a therapist.
Yeah. Well, to give people just a little more information on my story, just to give a point of reference with him, from what Dr. Jamie is saying. I have had 8 children, and 7 of which were with a previous marriage of a toxic, abusive relationship for 20 years. And to this baby number 8 is with my new husband. And this is our first child together. So she is baby number 8 for me, but he also has had 4 children from a previous marriage of 20 years in a toxic relationship. And so this is baby number 12 for both of us. I know it's mind blowing. But when we talk about childbirth, I have an amazing, you know, contrast of birth with an abusive relationship and that childhood trauma versus that self-regulating, um, neuro-safe environment of having a baby today. And what I did was I used the technique of hypnobirthing. Now, I will say our next speaker that's coming up, she is doing some self-love today. I told her she has to, I hate to say this, but she's going to have to take a backseat today and not present. So we will be skipping her session. Her husband has the stomach flu, and she is trying to take care of him. And I said, "Oh, girl, it's okay." But good news is we have a community full of workshops. So you're going to be able to hear all of her workshops inside of our community. If you go to www.join-ahs.org, that is our community. You'll have a link there to join. You'll get to see over 100 hours of these workshops. And I will be speaking today too, and I'll be at 1:00 Central Standard Time, and we have more powerful stories from practitioners all over that I want you to stay tuned for. But yeah, so that was kind of the hypnobirthing technique was what I went through with my daughter, and it's such a powerful story to see the contrast between what happened before and what happened now. And you know, you're absolutely right that the entire pregnancy I was practicing hypnotherapy techniques to calm my nervous system, to calm my child, to be able to bond with her. And I spoke to her. It was such a beautiful process, but I can't wait to tell you guys more about that. But I don't want to take away from time for you guys to answer some questions answered.
And I want to say one thing too, and I'll be quiet and let take the questions. I, as a therapist, say the most important thing we can do to connect our patients is to not start where we think they should be, but to start where they are. Now, that's a tough one, but Carl Jung would say it best: we'll lose our patients if we don't start where they are. Why do I say that? I see so many people in your chat box, and I see so many people at your self-love alternative healthcare solutions day, that whether you're doing essential oils, whether you are doing massage, whether you are doing hypnotherapy in your organization, alternative healthcare, by the way, this is important, Dr. Jamie. I want to say this to everybody here, that you don't know where your patient is at, nor do you know the intervention that bonds with them the most. So all of you who are doing different sort of polyvagal approaches here at the Alternative Healthcare Solutions, stay on. We're all snowflakes. We don't know. I'm not going to get into my therapy, but there's certain things I bond to in terms of interventions, and there's certain things I do not. So everybody who's on this call today and the people who are going to join us are all just as valid as Sigmund Freud, as Jung, as Adler, as Rogers. Why? Because it may be your intervention that is where that patient is starting and opens the window to the path to transformation. And our goal in complex trauma recovery is authenticity. And the child could never really be authentic, as Gabor said. But your intervention and fleas, whatever it is. And it could be the hypnotherapy, it could be essential oils, it could be whatever. Could be the means that they have the bridge over troubled waters to get to their recovery. And by the way, authenticity could be forever. It might not even be in this lifetime. But the beauty is you don't ever have to shape yourself like a pretzel again. You can be authentic. You can say what's on your mind to the person in front of you. And the key to authenticity is if they don't like what you say, they can call their therapist. You're not responsible for their emotions. Thank you. Okay, Dr. James. So everybody stay on. You may be the key to somebody's healing.
Beautiful. I love it. I believe that we all are keys to each other's healing, that support that we create. Community is so important. Being together, finding your tribe that believes the same thing that you do, that you can heal and recover, that there is a better life out there for you. I think that is so important to come together in that regard. So I'm going to get to the questions because I want to make sure you guys have your questions answered. It is okay if we go over just a little bit. I want to honor your time, Dr. Jamie, and your daughter's time because you guys are having a fabulous time in New York. And I'm sure she has a full itinerary for you today.
Amazing. It's been so powerful. I mean, just let go, let God. I've done nothing. And she set it all up, and I've had the best time of my life. And I am a New Yorker, y'all. Go ahead. So.
Beautiful. So Lisa wants to know, in regards to hypno, what if you're a female seeking help that had a female abuser, and transversely a male that had a male abuser? This question is in reference to whenever you suggested the male-female hypnotherapy combination.
Certainly. And I believe deeply, as I wouldn't be believing deeply if I wasn't a hypnotherapist myself. And I do use hypnotherapy. It's an experiential intervention. It allows us really to feel, and that is the key to our healing, is to feel, not to know. As I tell my doctors, you can't read your way into recovery. We call the TAR dojo, toxic abuse. You have to lean in and do it. But to your question, if you have that self-awareness, and many of us do. Many of us do go back in that tragic sort of flashback moment that our abuser was a male or our abuser was a female. So if you do know that, now here's the problem. Sometimes there are traumas you don't know about when you go into the induction with a good psychotherapist. But if you know the core issue was the trauma, whether it's physical, emotional, sexual abuse at the hands of a male or a female, and you have a good enough, and I call it therapeutic relationship with your therapist. And how to find one, y'all, just so you know, I write for Psychology Today. If you want to know alternative healthcare solutions, stay on and only talk to Jamie Lee. She knows this world much better than I. If you want a damn good therapist, go to two places. One is psychologytoday.com. On the front page, search for a therapist, put your zip code in, and only choose a trauma-trained, somebody with DBT, dialectical behavioral therapy, EMDR, Francis Shapiro's wonderful intervention for trauma, or IFS, internal family system. So that you can choose that. And I want you to interview that therapist to see what they're doing for their healthcare and their healing, because I don't want them projecting their stuff on you. That's number one. You can also go to a group called Psych Hub. But to the question that Jamie Lee just asked, please, if you do know it, and you're with a very good therapist who you have a therapeutic bond and you're not being referred out to a hypnotherapist, I do think you can do the work with another therapist who's the other sex. Only if you identify to know what you're going into the induction and to the ab reaction with. I refer out immediately because I don't have a therapeutic bond. I get a lot of calls for referrals. And so immediately I'll refer out to a woman to do a woman because I don't know what the clinical issues underneath are. There are very self-aware people, certainly in your group. I know, Jamie Lee, that if you do know, then it is acceptable to go down to an induction and ab reaction with the other sex. But you both have to have a strong therapeutic bond. You have to know what the key trauma was, so that there's no surprises when you go down under. So if it's cursory, you don't have a therapeutic bond, or you're making a referral to somebody and they want hypnotherapy, send them to a woman, if they're a woman, and send them to a male. If, on the other hand, they have a strong commitment to self-love through therapy, in complex trauma or neuroplasticity or retrain the brain, yes, it's perfectly acceptable to stay with the person with the therapeutic bond, being mindful that you may come up in things in the hypnotherapy process, with surprises. And therefore, I'd like you always to try to get 2 hours, not 1 hour, with your therapist to be able to process what occurred and to get the proper referral from what they may find out, which is new, and you may find out, which is new.
Love it. Beautiful. I want to ask this question because I know you've gone through trauma. I know that you've gone through narcissistic abuse and recovery yourself, and you're a clinical psychologist and having gone through it while being a psychologist, but you're also a parent, and it's so important. So, my question is, how can parents balance their healing journey while still being emotionally available for their children? I think children are just sponges of that emotion. So, what are some of your techniques, and how can parents balance that?
So definitely do the work. Okay, this is most important, and I tell our doctors, you got to lean in. We have as our, we're very fortunate. He's a very good friend of mine, but he was very inspirational in the process. His name is not doctor, but he's a brilliant clinician, even though he's not a clinician. Richard Grannon. Many of you may know from the toxic abusive space that he's on YouTube, and he has about 1 million people. Well, Richard's very bright and very cool. And he understands this world, and he's been through it. So my gig is that my daughter understands really well that my first thing is to myself, that we live by example. When my parents would say, do this, do that, do this, do that, and my mom later on got it together. Believe it or not, she became a psychologist. It's kind of like, if you go to our podcast, you'll see I work with Dr. Nadine, who is the wife of the Wolf of Wall Street. Jordan Belfort. If you ever watched The Wolf of Wall Street with Martin Scorsese, probably the worst narcissist you could imagine. But she went on to become a therapist. A lot of us do that. I will say this, that really you have to be the change that you seek. So in parenting, and I'll use my daughter because she's so insightful. She has a lot higher EQ than I ever had. And she'll see a therapist, no problem. And she believes in it because kids today, I think, are less shame and stigma driven. But I'll come back on a Tuesday from my therapist, and I have a trauma therapist, which is different. Like I said, a Peter Levine training. And I may be in a different frame of mind. I may say something very cool. And she'll look at me and she'll say, Dad, maybe I should see a trauma trained therapist. Why? Because we have to be the corrective emotional experience for our children. We cannot tell them what to do. The psychological reactance is when we tell somebody what to do and we're not doing it ourselves, they get, a case of, oh my gosh, this is hypocrisy, run away, and they become defiant, like I did because my parents would say, do this, but they would show me that they did none of this. So I really believe that peace and self-love begins with us. And self-love is very, very contagious, Jamie Lee. Self-love, as Carl Jung would say, yields collective love. And so the only way we can find peace on this earth, and certainly peace in our family, is to be the change we seek. That we have to do that, regardless of our child. And then our child, obviously, we need to sit down and realize that operant conditioning, behavioral conditioning, is an inconsistent thing. It creates the trauma bond, and it doesn't help. So get rid of this. Take the iPad away. Timeout time. I'm going to do this once. I'm going to do it twice. Sit with your child. And I always say when they become Veruca Salt, I use this, the Willy Wonka y'all sort of thing, when they become that spoiled person or whatever, you sit down and have a value-based discussion with them. Let them show you the way that they're going. The way I do with my daughter is I give her full independence because she really is rewarding that. She's meeting me halfway. The thing I do vet, and I will say this as a father, I vet the friends that she's with. If I see they're dark, or actually not themselves dark, because I don't think any child wants to be evil, y'all. That's why we have our prevention program, trying to train people how not to create the attachment disorder. But I do watch the parenting styles of the kids that she literally fraternizes with or goes out with. If they're not really connected, they allow their child pretty much, I would say, looks like they're being raised by wolves, and they're not really caring them much. The dad's flying around, the mom's doing something else. The child, you can almost diagnose the attachment disorder by 10 years old. You can see if they're jealous and they have lack of empathy and they're sucking. So I will vet that. Then if I see that it's a healthier family and they're all connected, then I let my daughter go. Because I know that healthy relationships, fellowships, co-regulation. I ran enough treatment centers for adolescents to know that healthy kids allow healthy kids to be healthier. So all I do is vet the people that she's with, don't try to over control her behavior. And then I watch her in these healthy environments go to work. So no magic there, but over controlling is not good. By the way, y'all, I will say this, and if you look in your environments, whether it's your supervisor, whether it's your colleague, whether it's your husband or your wife or whomever it is, the more controlling we are in our environment, the more out of control we are in our minds. It's a truism. So be with somebody who doesn't have control. Be with somebody who's in the moment, and you'll find out. Then you will thrive more. So I don't know if to answer your question, Jamie Lee, but I only vet the families and the kids that she hangs with. Otherwise, I let her go, and I also get out of the way because I do realize that parents at some point are just guides, and we're not going to really help. But again, a child raises their self-esteem with other healthy co-regulated kids. Co-regulation is the key. I'll shut up here and I'll let you go on to your thing. But at the Polyvagal Institute, Dr. Stephen Porgia is not a psychologist. Okay. Yeah. Bessel's a psychiatrist. Yes. Gabor's a primary care doctor. Yes. I'm a psychologist. The guy who started us is an anthropologist. We only developed as human beings through co-regulation, not through survival of the fittest. Lamarck and Darwin, that was all just, forget it. We weren't ever survival of the fittest. We came around co-regulating through healthy people, creating psychological safety. We can change the chemistry of our body through humor, through minerals, through your essential oils, through hypnotherapy, we can change all that. But we did only evolve because we could change the chemistry of your body. And so I'll do it another time because of time here, but you can go on to YouTube and put 478. And I'd like for everybody after this to do 80 seconds of breath work with Dr. Andy Weil and watch the inflammation in your body go down in 80 seconds. Watch the adrenal glands get calmed. Watch the cortisol be lessened and realize that in 80 seconds, just like a cop going into a SWAT situation, you're going to create this hormone called oxytocin, which connects your neurotransmitters. Only humans can retrain their body in less than 80 seconds. And that's a beautiful technique because it's like having a trauma therapist in your back. My daughter did it during COVID with her classmates. And I think we can all do that ourselves. We can treat ourselves.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful. I love it. I love it. I am so excited for today. Thank you for kicking it off on such a great first workshop. I'm so excited. So because Dr. Jody is not going to be able to perform her workshop here at the next hour, I went ahead and opened up our networking. So what the networking is, you can go in there, jump on it, click on it, and go meet people within the group. Yeah, go ahead.
Would you like me to do the breath work real quick before they do that so they can have it throughout the day?
That would be fabulous.
All right. So let me give you an experiential technique of how to really show yourself self-love. When nobody is around you, okay, you can't depend upon somebody else. You can retrain the body. You really can. And here's how my daughter will say dinosaur days. When I became a social worker, I became a trauma therapist in 1990. My first contract was with the City of Miami Sheriff's Department. So when they went into SWAT situations, let's just say this, and we're always in some SWAT situation, y'all, which is running into a burning home. I love working with first responders. I just have a joy. Well, if they ran into a burning home or ran into a SWAT situation, chances are they'll run in and be very reactive. What does that mean? Well, they're going to shoot somebody or they're going to get shot themselves. So they take 80 seconds to retrain the body. And a lot of what you're going to do today is all of this. How do I retrain my body to reset itself? So we chose to do breath work. And the reason why I use Andy Weil, who I do this at United Health. Okay. So you can imagine if they allow this in, it's not voodoo chicken bones or Santeria. We have analytics scans that show that if you do breath work in the moment, it calms you. It allows you to be proactive. You're not going to run in with guns blaring. You're going to make the right decisions. And Andy would say, you can calm yourself now, which I'm going to do. There's a lot of buildup, y'all, but it takes you 80 seconds to do this. You can calm yourself down in the moment, Andy would tell you. And if you do it 4 to 6 times a day, Okay, that's just 80 seconds, y'all. That's self-love. Do you have 80 seconds to give yourself, right? To change it. Humor can do this too, y'all. Humor is also a shift. That's why I love humor and I laugh with my daughter everywhere. It shifts our body. But if you got 80 seconds, you can shift the chemistry of your body. So if you're feeling dysregulated, okay, go to a practitioner on this here. Definitely do essential oils, do massage, you do your hair, do your nails, do things that really are good for you. Be kind to yourselves. Hang around healthy people. But if you're dysregulated and you'll feel your body dysregulate at some point, do some breath work. And here's how you do it. You don't have to do the breath work. For those people who are listening, I don't want you to sign off. Some people like at work, they'll say, I don't like the breath work. And I'll say, it's an emotional regulator. What do you like to do? They said, well, I like to crochet. Okay. Or I like to do yoga. I like to do Pilates. I said, well, all these exactly you can do in 80 seconds. So you can take a walk and vitamin D around the clinic and emotionally regulate too. But breath work is tried and proven. So I'm going to do it with you. I'll leave it with you today. If Jamie Lee wants to say, hey, go do some breath work, it's very easy. And you can go, like I said, to 478 on YouTube. Andy, when you hear him, will ask you to put your tongue like this on the roof of your mouth. There is a feng shui, there's a chakra, there is energy. In toxic relationships, you can find the dysregulation of your body. Many people get TMJ. You'll see, even me, when I had surgery 4 times in my ear, that trauma shows itself in the middle ear. And so all these things, your body does keep the score. But in 80 seconds, you can change the chemistry of your body. You really can, by doing breath work 4 times. Those who don't want to do the breath work, in the 80 seconds I'm about to do it with, here's 3 things you can do. You can stay silent. We usually don't show ourselves silence and calmness. You can pray. Okay, it doesn't matter if it's Jesus, Moses, Buddha, or Allah. Prayer is a neuroregulator. Why it works so well. It does shift the brain. Okay, it really does. Or in those 80 seconds, if you don't want to do the breath work, when they ask you to close your eyes, go to a safe place that you once were. Only you know where that was. I could tell you mine. I'm way older than you guys and where it was. But there's one safe place I remember that I never felt safer in my life. If you don't want to do the breath work, when I ask you to close your eyes, go to that safe place, touch it, feel it, and smell it. And that's a grounding technique. And all we do at Taranon is grounding techniques. We give you a toolbox. But try this with breath work. I'll do it real quick. Andy does it even better. If you want to choose to put your tongue on the roof of your mouth, you can. But let's try breath work. And those who don't want to use the time to pray or meditate or stay silent or go to a safe place, feel free. Okay, but let's all try it. And I'll leave you with 80 seconds of self-love. So if you will, close your eyes. I'll close my eyes. It just allows us, a shift from the moment before. Okay, close your eyes. Put your feet on the ground. If you have shoes on, feel the floor through your shoes. Okay, if you're barefooted, of course, if it's Saturday morning, wherever you're at, and you're barefooted, feel the floor through your feet. Okay, now with your body upright with respect in the chair you're at for the practice and for your own selves, let's do 478. You're stuck following my voice right now. You'll have Andy's. I hope you put sticky notes everywhere and put 478. Soon it'll be your voice. And you can do this constantly. But now with your eyes closed, your feet on the ground, your back upright with respect. Let me just tell you before you do it, here's how you do 478. I'm going to ask you to breathe in through your nostrils like this. For 4 seconds, you're alive. You're in the moment. You can feel it just go in and out. You can't be in fear or anxiety land. You can only be in grateful land because you're alive. So breathe in for 4 seconds. Then I'm going to say keep the breath in your head for up to 7 seconds. Now, if you want, you can picture daffodils or butterflies, rainbows, or guided images, or simply stay silent for 7 seconds and keep the breath. But the secret sauce, and this is really a physiological, anatomical thing. I want you for 8 seconds, when I say blow the air out for 8 seconds, do it loudly like this. That's what literally triggers your vagus nerve response. And your vagus nerve, which is the vagabond nerve, the longest nerve in your body, we never befriend it. It goes from the cortex of your brain through your healing organs into your gut. Okay, that's befriending. That's self-love. Okay, anytime you want throughout the day, you can excuse yourself. Nobody will even know you're doing it. But then you'll calm your vagus nerve, which goes through the healing organs and into your gut. Easy enough, right? 478. Okay, so let's all try it, or you can try the alternative. So feel free to close your eyes right now with your feet on the ground. Again, if you have shoes on, feel the floor through your shoes. And if you're barefooted, feel the floor through your feet. And with your back upright respect, I'm going to leave you into Jamie Lee's capable hands afterwards. And we're going to do a self love exercise called breath work right now. Okay? So with your eyes closed now, breathe in through your nostrils for 4 seconds. Keep it. Swish it around for up to 7 seconds. Now, blow out with passion and gusto for 8. Breathe into calmness again for 4 seconds. Keep it. Swish it around for up to 7 seconds. Now, blow out with passion for 8. Breathe into calmness again for 4. Keep it. Swish it for 7. Now, blow out the stress for 8. Last time. Breathe in the calmness for 4 seconds. Keep it. Swish it for 7. Now blow out all the anxiety feeling this morning for 8. With your eyes still closed, feet on the ground. Go inside your body, literally, and scan it. What you've done, literally, was you've calmed the adrenal glands, literally in less than 80 seconds. You calmed the cortisol output that your body was feeling, maybe by waking up or hearing my voice or my stories, which could have been dysregulated. You did that. You calmed, literally, the inflammation of the body, which is so critical when you're dealing with autoimmune issues and things in your body, chronic issues. You've also, in that 80 seconds, produced the oxytocin, which we call the happy hormone that connects to your neurotransmitters. Really, you did that in less than 80 seconds, called the positive hormone. That's how you change your body when you're feeling dysregulated. You can do it today, throughout the day. You can do it in your lifetime. You can do it at work. You can do it with your partners. You can do it anytime. You can retrain your brain. When you're ready, open your eyes, come back to your conference today. Realize what you have just done for yourself is an act of self-compassion. And a moment of self-compassion can change your day. And you guys have the keys. This is the beauty of the alternative healthcare group here. Okay. A moment can change your day. And a string of moments just like this can change the course of your life. So be the change you want to see in all others. Take your oxygen first, as the book I wrote said many years ago. Okay. Know that better things are coming. They truly, truly are, especially if you can start reparenting yourself. So be kind to yourselves. Know that better things are coming. So just breathe. It's all yours, Jamie Lee. Thank you for inviting us at the Star Network, and we'd be with you forever and ever and ever. We appreciate you and the whole group here of what you do for all others and your techniques. Don't stop. This is the future of psychology.
Thank you so much. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Have a
Take
great
care.
day, you all. Bye-bye.